Hey guys, welcome back to Ironside Ranch. We did get a new camera, so if this is a little bit different in the footage and in the sound quality, that's why. We're still working on getting some mics and everything set up, so bear with us as we work through this. What I want to talk about today is planting season, right? We got planting season coming up for anybody that's doing a commercial or a microgreen operation or whatever it is. You're getting food in the ground, and if you're doing your homestead, now is the perfect time to start looking at that. Especially in the southern states. If you're a little bit further up north, may not be quite time yet to start getting those seeds planted and getting them sprouted. But what I want to do is I want to show you a quick sprouting video on how we actually get our vegetables started. Now, quick note on this. If you talk to 20 different farmers, 20 different microgreen guys, 20 different whatever, homesteaders, just general gardeners, you will find 20 different ways of doing this. We are not expert gardeners, we are not botanists, we are not biologists, we are not whatever else you want to specialize in. But this is something that, this is the way that we do it, this is the way that my dad always did it, so this is the way that we have elected to do this. So I'm going to go through step by step, and we're going to step away from the green screen and show you all how to, well, I'm not going to actually step away from the green screen, I'm just going to show you the clips, we'll put it all in here. But I want to show you all how we actually do this. So the first step is we need to obviously have our trays, and we need to purchase some type of tray to actually start these in. You can use egg cartons. There are different mediums that you can use to try to save a buck, but in reality the trays are cheap enough, it's not really worth it, and they're reusable. You can hit them again next year, store them in a tub, and they're done. Now, we do need to keep that ground at temperature, and so when we think about it, seeds don't sprout unless the soil starts getting to a temperature to where they can germinate in nature. And so that's what we're trying to mimic in these seed trays. So what we want to do is we want to actually put these heating pads underneath here. Now you want your heater to actually be on a timer, on a thermostat, that'll actually warm it up and get it to temperature. Now we use 70 degrees, you can use 75, you can use 65. You'll find if you use 65, you'll have some things that don't quite want to sprout and the seeds will rot. So 70 seems to be a good all-around medium. You can again use 75, but just realize there are some preferences for certain seeds. So really what you're trying to do is you're trying to set up, hey, what's the best for all of my seeds? 70 seems to be about right there. Now on the light side, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated if you're looking at something that is outdoors or next to a window versus something that, in our particular setup, there's no window around it. The only light that they're getting is that artificial light right now. As we change some things here on the farm, we'll have a little bit more natural setup for them, but that's what we're limited to at this point in time. So that artificial light, you have to have a substantial enough light. We're actually going to be adding another one. So in the footage that you'll see here, we only have one. We're adding another one here. And that's why we didn't fill up all the seed trays either. So it's specifically so that we can add that more light in there and get a little bit more daylight hours. Now that light will have a timer. Again, we're trying to mimic what happens in nature. Nature gives the soil and the ground and everybody a rest for 8 to 10 hours a day. So we're going to do that same thing by making the sun go down. So we set our timer for 12 hours. 14 hours is about the maximum you want to go. Depending on where you're at, you may be able to do a little bit less on that end of things. I remember Dad used to always keep it in front of his window in his shop, and so he'd get all the natural light in, and then he'd only have that light going for a couple hours every day. So the next thing that we're going to look at is we've got our heater, so we'll get our soil temperature right. The way to put that soil temperature in is to use that temperature probe. We've got our lights are in place. Okay, now it's time to actually get the seeds in the ground. So what are we going to do? We're going to fill this with obviously potting soil. Potting soil, topsoil, something that has been designed for this. Now, you can't just go out and pick up clay dirt to do this. Obviously, we have to look at something that is intentionally designed to as a growing medium. We use a lot of potting soil. We use earth that has been topsoil that has been composted, that's very rich in nutrition. All those things are great. The downside to potting soil is you do tend to get a lot of chemical fertilizer in there, and so if you can avoid that, and if you can make your own compost by just buying some topsoil and mixing some organic matter with it, you can get a pretty good medium to start your seeds in. But again, sometimes you're just limited and you have to deal with what you got to deal with. So what we do is we want to fill the seed trays up. And then we're going to go through and we're going to plant these seed trays. Now, a lot of times if you buy those seed trays, they'll come with these little tools. These little tools are actually very helpful because those seeds are super, super small, y'all. They are tiny. And once your hands get dirty, you're not going to be able to grab 1 or 2 of them or 3 of them or whatever. And so that's what these little things, these little tools that they have are for. They got little scoopers, they got little probes to put it down into the dirt so you can try to get them at the right depth. And then you start dealing with the depth of the seeds. Some seeds say 1/4 of an inch, others say 1/8 of an inch. In general, for typical garden stuff, we tend to just push them down a little bit and put a little more dirt on top of them. And it seems to work okay. So keeps the moisture in. Really what we're just trying to do is get those seeds covered. But we want that light to be able to get through to them as soon as they sprout. So we don't want them too covered. Again, trying to mimic what happens in nature. What happens in nature is the seeds fall, seeds go on top, biodegrade, they get covered with a little bit of topsoil. So that's what we're trying to mimic here on our little seed trays. Now, those tools help you. You can put 1 seed per tray. That is fairly tedious to do. We only do that on certain types of plants. For the most part, you can put 3 or 4 per tray and just kind of knock them in there. And then one of them will sprout, or several of them will sprout. As they start growing into plants, you can pick out ones, you can separate the rootstock and everything, and then plant them, and then throw out the ones that you don't need. So there are plenty of options there. Like I said, we planted some where we just put 1 seed in there. Those really tiny ones, especially for herbs, I'm going to put a lot of seeds in. So anyway, so then the next step, like I said, we want to cover this with a little bit of topsoil after we're all done. And then that tray is virtually complete. Make sure that you use those markers in there and that you actually dedicate what they are. For ours, we put the marker behind the row, and then that tells us, hey, this is, whatever type of tomato, this is basil, this is whatever else time. And everything in front of that marker is that. So we only do complete rows of these things. If we decide that we don't need a complete row, we leave those spots blank and move back. And that keeps us organized in here. If you don't do it, you will forget. Once those start sprouting, they all look the same. And unless you're a really experienced gardener, you will have a hard time, which you wouldn't be watching this video if you were. You will have a hard time trying to figure out what that is. So stay away from that. Put the markers in there. Those markers are real cheap and they're reusable. Once you label them, once you draw on there with the marker, just save that one and you can use it next year. Now, I would advise you to store them alphabetically so that you know which ones you have. 3 different types of basil. You don't want to end up trying to find it, making new ones. Anyways, store them alphabetically, it helps. Okay, so we got them labeled, got the seeds buried, got everything put in there. Now we have to figure out our water. There's several different ways of watering this. What we do is we use trays that have a reservoir at the bottom. Through capillary action and through just the normal absorption of the soil, it'll keep that soil damp. And so you just want to keep that, keep the bottom of that tray filled up with water so that way it keeps that soil damp. We're not trying to saturate the soil. We do want that soil damp, and so if I put my finger in there, it should be wet. Seeds take a little bit more moisture to start. Once they germinate, obviously the moisture starts backing off. Now, the last thing that we'll end up doing is we'll put this lid on top of here, and that lid keeps some moisture in. We want to do that just until we see the seeds sprout. Once the seeds sprout, we'll remove that lid because we don't want to create a bunch of mold and mildew and stuff in there. Right now, all that's doing is keeping the moisture in and helping us in that sense to not lose a bunch of that air or a bunch of that moisture to evaporation in the air. So that is the long and the short of how we plant our seeds, guys. So like I said, this was a down and dirty, nitty gritty, like show you, hey, this is how we get our seeds in the ground. This is not a complicated process, but I'm not an expert gardener. There are a lot of guys that are much more competent at this subject than I am. And gardening has never really been my thing. So I really wanted Amanda Lynn to do this video, but she doesn't seem to enjoy being on camera as much. So if y'all have any questions, post it down in the comment box. I would really encourage you to go to Learn to Grow with Masilla. She has an exceptional channel. Lots of good information on there. She's been a huge help to Amanda Lynn. Talking to Amanda Lynn, conversing, she sent us seeds. Just an absolutely phenomenal channel. And she has forgotten more about doing this than I will probably ever know. So I would just highly encourage you to go check that channel out if you really want to figure out how to do all this stuff and how to get your garden going. But I wanted to get this video out there so that y'all could get ready for the planting season, get ready to grow some food, because we know if you've been watching this channel, we got a tough year coming up in front of us. And we will catch y'all later. I'll see you down in the comments.